concept of W to our members who have joined in the webinar. So over to you, Mehernosh.
Yeah, thank you, Rakhi, for inviting me for this webinar. Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for.
Yeah, thanks, Rakhi. Welcome everybody on the webinar, and it's my pleasure to be here and talk about the most important graph in the world. Well, I will talk about myself a bit later, but to just touch upon it, my name is Mehernosh Randeria. I am based in Mumbai, and I am known as the W3 coach. As in, I am India's first and only coach who covers the 3 W's of your life and helps you to prosper in the 3 W's of your life. Any guesses what the 3 W's are? People who are not, who don't know me, the question is open only to them. So any guesses what the 3 W's are, you can just put in the chat box. Yeah, are you able to hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah? Okay, so, okay, let me reveal it since I'm not getting any answers on the chat. Well, the 3 W's stand for wealth, wisdom, and wellness. So kind of aligned to our ancient Indian philosophy of Tan, Man, and Dhan. And being a finance professional by qualification and being a coach at heart, I help you to maximize or rather optimize the balanced prosperity in terms of wealth, wisdom, and wellness. Okay, I'm seeing comments saying that the video is off and can't hear anything. Can I get a quick check from all the participants that you are able to see and listen to me?
Yes, I guess if we can have a show of hands,
Yeah,
if we are being audible to everyone.
Shilpa has messaged that no audio.
Shilpa has messaged. Shilpa has raised her hands.
Yeah, and it shows to me privately in the chat box.
Maybe she has put.
Can we unmute people and ask them? Hello, Nidhi?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear some background noise in
Yes.
Nidhi.
Yes, yes, background noise.
Okay, Latika says it's done. Thank you, Latika. Shilpa may need to join the audio.
Yeah, I will just chat up with her and you can help me. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Nidhi. Hope you are able to hear me.
Hi.
Great.
Hi.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Yes. Okay. So even the other participants who are there, Farida, Rubinas, and Veena, I don't see their audio being activated, Rakhi. So maybe you can just inform them.
Yes, I will do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nidhi, you will have to mute your audio, please. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Disha. Welcome. Hi, Abhishek.
Great. Yeah.
All right. Shall we continue, Rakhi? And
yeah.
yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so to continue on, what is this most important graph in the world? Is this a lecture on mathematics or graphs or statistics? No. We are going to talk about the graph which matters to all of us, which is the way our mind remembers things. This is nothing but the graph of recall and patterns of memory to help you understand how the human mind or the human brain remembers or recalls whatever it learns. Most of us already know that our recall is limited to around maybe 20 to 50% in that range of whatever we learn. This is an off-the-cuff statement. But how does it work out? I mean, what elements of what we learn do we recall and what elements do we forget? And why does it happen? This is what we're going to see in today's webinar. So this graph was created by a person called Tony Buzan. Tony Buzan is the man who introduced the world to mind maps. We'll be talking about mind maps. We might just touch upon it later on if time permits. I'm actually certified to train on learning skills which include mind mapping, memory techniques, speed reading, and accelerated learning techniques. And it is thanks to Tony Buzan who has brought mind maps to the world. Mind maps are nothing but a visual representation tool of our thoughts and ideas. Now, what Tony Buzan did is that he worked out why is it that people remember certain things and why is it that people forget certain things. And he put this all together in a very beautiful manner to explain by way of the most important graph in the world. I'm sure the curiosity is now building up even more to understand what is this graph all about. So let me show you how it works. We'll show it by way of a visual depiction. Being a graph, it has to be visually depicted, by the way. So on the x-axis over here, if we were to put the time that it takes to learn anything, which means it starts with the point where learning starts and the graph ends on the x-axis ends with the point where learning ends. So this particular time element we are talking about over here, it applies to any kind of learning interaction or any kind of learning experience for that matter. Some examples of learning interaction could be like reading a book or studying a particular topic or just sitting with a chapter and just skimming through a few pages. Wherever you start till whatever point of time you end, that is the time I'm talking about over here. The examples I gave you are in context of learning and teaching, but actually this applies to anything and everything that our mind would like to absorb. Examples, let's say you're meeting somebody for the first time. You have that brief span of introduction, maybe in a networking meeting or in a group meeting, and you are introducing yourself, that person's introducing himself or herself, you're getting connected. Now, that period during which you are with that person, that itself is also a learning interaction. So then the time here is the time that you start meeting the person till the time that you say goodbye and see you again next time. That is the time we are talking about. It could even mean a whole day of learning. So if it's a classroom session, right from the beginning till the end, or if it's a semester for that matter, what you learned in the beginning of the semester till what you learned till the end of the semester. So learning period we are talking about, depending on that learning interaction, could vary from a few seconds to an entire lifetime of learning. So that's about the x-axis. On the y-axis, we are going to cover the amount of information that we recall after the learning has ended. Please note this. It's the amount of information that we recall after the learning has ended. So what do we recall from the learning during the time that we have done the learning? After the learning has ended, that is what will show in this particular graph. Okay. So now, before I come to the graph, I would like to demonstrate this with a quick activity, a quick exercise. It's going to be a test of your memory. So I'll be saying a few words now, which would be quite random. And I want you all to remember it. So it goes without saying that you will not write it down or use any other kind of technique so that you will recall better. So even if you have already learned some certain memory techniques, the point here is that please do not use them. Because the purpose of this is not to test those memory techniques of yours, but it is to test how your brain works in a natural manner. So if this information is just thrown at you randomly, then after this information is completely given to you, from that point of time, how much are you able to recall? That's the test of it. Okay, so everyone ready? Can we just see a show of tick marks on the screen? Yeah, everybody? Yes, thank you. So I'm starting with a set of words. Please listen carefully. Do not note them down. Do not use any techniques to memorize. And later on, I'll ask you a few questions around what you have heard. Starting now. Building, apartment, floor, tile, wall, glass, ceiling, roof, sky, sun, night. But, for, then. But, for, then. Book, game, Amitabh Bachchan. But, for, then. Jungle, lion, cheetah, orange, mango. And now last few words. Kitchen, knife, table, chair. Okay, so these were the words. Now let's see who remembers what. All right, I want you all to participate by answering to my questions. You can answer in the chat box, or even Zoom platform has a capability of you giving a tick mark or raising your hand. So right now, if you have raised your hand, please lower your hand. Yeah, and please lower your hands right now. And when I ask you questions, I would like you to raise the hand. Do not give the answers, just raise your hand. My first question to you. How many of y'all remember almost all the words that I mentioned? Okay. Okay. Yeah, so we've already seen there are no hands up for this. I was actually going to ask you all the words, but I modified that to say almost all, and still I don't see all the hands up. So, okay, so that's one point which is made. Next thing, how many of y'all, don't say the word, just raise your hand. How many of y'all remember the first word which I said? Raise your hand. Yeah, thank you, Abhishek, Latika, Nidhi. Okay. Rubiraz, Shilpa, thank you. Great. You can see the results, they are on the screen. Everyone remember the first word. Okay. How many of y'all remember the second word? Okay, thank you. Third word. Okay, please see the response. I hope you are all are able to see the other people's hands as well. Yeah, thank you. Fourth word. Fifth word. Sixth word. Yeah, Shilpa, good point. We will analyze all of that. Seventh word. And raise your hand only if you're certainly 100% sure that, yeah, this was the seventh word. Okay, good. Eighth word. Ninth word. Great. Look at the screen. Thank you, Latika. So the thing is that what is presented to you at the beginning of the learning session is something that is the most memorable, something that has the highest ability to be recalled. Okay, let me ask you some question again. How many of y'all remember the last word which I said? The very last word. Okay, thank you, Abhishek. How many of you remember the last few words? May not be in that order, but last few words. The set of last few words. Yeah. Thank you. So this is the second part of the learning. We remember the most what we are learning at the beginning of the time period. And that's where the words that I said initially had a greater recall. And then as the period elapses, the recall drops. How many of you all remember the words which were said in the center? Hardly anyone. And then the words that were said towards the end also have some kind of higher recall. So this is coming up in the graph over here. Please have a look on the screen. This is what happens during that learning interaction. What we learned in the beginning is remembered the most, and that is called as the primacy effect. And what we learn at the end also has a higher recall, but relatively lower than the primacy effect. This is called the recency effect. How many of y'all here are teachers or trainers or in any form imparting education to people? Okay, thank you, Abhishek. Yeah, Shilpa, thank you. So how do you take this learning in a teaching situation, a teaching environment? How can you make use of this primacy effect and recency effect? There are more effects coming up. We are taking it one by one. But talking about these two effects together, yeah, okay, storytelling. Shilpa says storytelling, okay. But what basically, so yeah, storytelling, you can start with a story. So that will have a higher effect of recall. Yes. Connecting words, I will talk about that after some time. In terms of specifically for primacy and recency. Yes. Any thoughts on specific use of primacy and recency? Word train. Abhishek, can you explain a bit more about word train? Thank you, Shilpa. Yeah, connecting words. Yeah, okay. Words beginning with the same letter. Yeah, yes. So primacy and recency is something which is not always in your control. Because We are talking about in terms of we are talking about this in terms of the time that is taken in a learning interaction. Let's say you have a learning session which goes on at a stretch for 50 minutes or 90 minutes or sometimes even for the full day. Does that mean that primacy effect means that what you said at the beginning of the day can be remembered the most, and only what you said at the end of the day can be remembered the most? What happens in between? So here's the secret and the takeaway in terms of applying this learning. You can, to whatever extent possible, maximize the primacy effect and recency effect by having shorter learning interactions or teaching experiences. And how to do that? How to do that? Let's say you have a full day of training. How can you maximize your primacy and recency points? Anyone? Just imagine what would happen if this would be the graph of your learning, of your teaching. The question is, Raina, how do you maximize the primacy and recency effect, which is what we remember. We remember most what is said at the beginning and the most what is said at the end. Okay, so let me give it away to you. By giving more breaks in your learning interaction. Even if you're a teacher or a professor in a classroom where you are expected to teach for 1 hour at a stretch or 50 minutes at a stretch, you can still give breaks by not letting the children or students go out of your class, but making them do some kind of interactive interaction within themselves, or asking some questions that breaks the pattern, that indicates that, okay, one part of the learning is over. Now, okay, make your notes or get into groups and discuss with each other, and then we will come back and start the next thing. Yes, thank you, Raina. The breaks does make them more productive in terms of learning. So break pattern, it depends on you, Shilpa. What is your learning period? If you are a trainer and you're teaching for the whole day, I think there would be a lunch break, a few coffee breaks, but even otherwise, you can maximize breaks in between. The ideal stretch of learning is said to be around 90 minutes, but at times even that could be too long, especially if the topic is too intense. So figure your own ways of giving students a break from what they are learning. Just try to break the monotony of the pattern of learning so that they are fresh and back for the next learning. Okay. Now let's continue. I would like you to again recall the words which I said earlier. Yeah, 40 minutes is also fine, Shilpa. Whatever works for you, so depending on your topic. Yeah, Pomodoro technique is devised on that. Yeah, Raina. Okay. So now I would like you to again recall the set of words which I mentioned. Some of you joined late. I think Raina, Prerna, you all joined a bit later after that. But this is for the people who have heard the list of words. I asked you how many of you all remembered the first few words and the last few words, and this is the response we got. My next question is that there was one particular word in my list of words which I'm sure most of you would have remembered. Which one was that? You can mention the word in the chat box. Yes, Rakhi got it. Amitabh Bachchan. Now, I just told you, yeah, Abhishek will come to but now then as well, but I said one particular word. I just told you that we remember the most what is told at the beginning and what is told at the end. Amitabh Bachchan was somewhere in the middle. Does this mean that this effect is not working of recency and primacy? And how do you remember Amitabh Bachchan of all the other words that were said? Yes? What do you think? It was the odd one out. He's popular. Okay. What else? It clicked me. Okay. He's credible. Okay. Yeah, Raina. But it's a set of words. Raina, you missed the words. I said around 30, 40 words in the beginning. And one of the words in between was Amitabh Bachchan. And how come people remember that? So here's the point. We remember something which stands out, which may not necessarily fit into what was said initially or at the end, but it really stands out from the difference, from the rest of the words. As you can see on the screen over here, something in the middle. In fact, this can be an exception to the fact of the primacy effect having the most highest recall. What stands out can have an even higher recall than a primacy or a recency. Yes, stands out. So it is like exceptional. It is out of the blue, not expected. I was saying some random words. They were either some nouns or some prepositions that I was using. But here comes a proper noun, a person who you all have some kind of imagination or recall about. That picture comes to your mind. Yeah, not expected. So that is what is the effect of imagination. It is also called the von Restorff effect, named after the famous philosophian or the psychologist called von Restorff. He came up with this point that if you want something to have a higher recall, then make sure it stands out from the rest of the stuff that you're teaching. The other part of imagination is also being able to connect with the senses. When I said Amitabh Bachchan, what happened to you suddenly when you were listening to the words? Some of you either saw a picture of Amitabh Bachchan in your mind, and you saw a picture, again, that may not have been the same. Some of you may have seen him in his current avatar of the old man. Some of you may have seen him in the angry young man role, depending on whatever you connected about him. Isn't it? So it's connecting with your visual senses. Some of you may have connected with his baritone voice when that word came up. So it connects to your auditory senses. Or some of you may have a certain feeling for him that, yeah, he really stands out. He may be your role model. So it connects with your 5 senses. And it stands out separately. That's why it has a higher recall. So how do you apply the imagination effect in your teaching? Or the visual effect? And here is what Shilpa said earlier. Mind maps. Having something which is visually outstanding. Using role plays, doing some kind of drama, something that really stands out different from the routine that you are teaching. Routine in the sense the topic may be routine. You may be teaching maths, you may be teaching history. But if you're talking about Shivaji and you do a kind of a skit over there to demonstrate how Shivaji conquered Afzal Khan, there it really stands out. The person, when the student is writing in his papers also, it will just be a higher recall. So see how you can bring in these effects in your teaching as well. Yes, connecting the 5 senses in any which way. Yes, triggering your senses basically. Okay, next effect. Now my next question from the words that I mentioned. There were certain words that stood out, but they were not very extraordinary. It was not like Amitabh Bachchan. They were like very common, normal words, but you will remember those. Why? Which were those words? Yes, Rakhi. But, for, then. Nothing extraordinary about it. They are just simple. Yes. What makes them higher in recall is repetition. Something that gets repeated during the learning interaction gets the benefit of a higher recall. And repetition also gets associated with whatever you think is happening at that point. When I was saying a list of words, I was talking about certain nouns initially. And then I came up with but, for, then. But, for, then. I even repeated it. So what happened in your mind when I first time said but, and then I said for, and then I said then? You associated it with something or the other. Some examples here. Someone could have associated it with, here some pattern is getting broken. Yeah, initially it was following a pattern of a room, and now suddenly there were some words, yeah, conjunction came up. A noun was there, suddenly a conjunction came up. What's happening? Then a repetition came up, so you associated it with being repeated. And again, for a third time, it got repeated later on as well when I said but, for, then. So whatever you are able to associate with something or the other and gets repeated also has a higher recall. Okay, these are 4 effects. There are 3 more that we are going to talk about quickly. I'm going to ask you a few questions. How many of you, or let me say a few words. I want you all to raise your hand if that word was there in the list. Yeah, thank you, Shilpa. Yes, Rubinas. So I will ask you. So was the word building in the list? Yes, thank you. So raise your hand up if you agree that that word was there in that list. Was house in the list? Raise your hand up if you agree the word house was there in the list. Okay, so for Shilpa, house was there in the list. And the others say no. Okay. Was the word tiger in the list? No. Okay. Windows. Was window in the list? Yes. Okay. So Rakhi, Shilpa, Latika say that window was there in the list. So firstly, thank you for coming up with an answer, although it is a wrong answer. And that is exactly what I wanted to demonstrate over here. The window word was not in the list. What I said was building, apartment, tile, wall, glass, ceiling. And the mind went and said window. You made your own understanding of the associations that were getting formed. And this is what often happens in a learning situation. You say, okay, I know what's coming up. Here are the formations of a house, an apartment. So yeah, window would be there. Yeah, wall, floor, tile. But no, window was not there in the list. And this is the next effect I'm talking about, which is the effect of misunderstanding and understanding. Yes, Prerna, absolutely right. Miscommunication happens in this manner. Not only a learning situation, even in an interaction you're having with a friend, it happens quite often. You say, yeah, I said this, you said this, then I said this, and the person says, no, I never said that. See, it is natural for you to forget what was said. It is natural for you to recall what was said. But is it natural for you to recall what was not said? Think about it. This is understanding and misunderstanding which happens in our head. So be mindful of this. Yes, your own perceptions come into play. Our own zoning out comes up. We daydream. We take for granted that we know what the speaker is going to say next. पता है यार क्यों सुनना है? and your mind drifts away, assuming that you have heard certain things from the speaker, which the speaker has not even said. This is something you need to be careful when you're teaching. And therefore, a better way to take care of it is by asking questions, by asking confirmation of, have you understood this? Again, repetition helps to reinforce the understanding. Great, thank you. Next pattern is about meaning. What happened here in terms of the words and creating effect of a house and filling in the gaps was the effect of meaning, or in psychological terms it is called gestalt. The mind loves to create connections and fill in the gaps. When something is shown to the mind which is incomplete, the mind readily wants to go and complete it. For example, a suspense movie, you want to guess the outcome. For example, the box office success of Bahubali 2 was mainly due to the fact that they said, Kattappa ne Bahubali ko kyun mara? And that itself, the mind just wanted to rush to close that open loop. That was curiosity that was there in the mind. Now, how do you incorporate this in your teaching? Any thoughts? In teaching, training, what do you do? How do you incorporate the effect of meaning? Yeah. Want to know more? Yes, you want to know more. And just the way